I see this a lot with women in particular when we're looking at body confidence. They go, I just want to feel happy in my skin. And I'm like, do you think that like losing 5 kilos is going to do that?
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
So we're just talking about this, and we were about to start talking about it, but we've decided to create a month fully dedicated to women. And this is probably really deep to start the podcast with. Yeah.
Jump in.
Yeah. But we actually haven't had too many females on the podcast. And that was a really big realization for me. And it was not, I wasn't conscious of it. I was just like, oh. And we've had a few deep conversations in here about equality and the current world. And that was something for me that I was like, okay, like, you're either feeding the problem or you're a part of the solution. So we, as I said, we decided to dedicate a whole month to women, and with the goal of having conversations that inspire, women all around the globe to want to achieve more, and potentially stand up against inequality. So welcome to the podcast. We're sitting here with Sharelle. What we might do before we dive into that is I'll get you to introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do. And maybe we can kind of cross back.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that is just incredible to hear, to be honest. And we were, like I said, having a conversation about podcasting in general and how there wasn't a lot of women in the space as well. And that sort of led me. But yeah, before we get into that, I guess, hello, I'm Sharelle Grant, and I call myself a women's health and fitness coach. So I have a very long background in nursing and midwifery, and I guess that's what sort of sparked the passion for working with women and being able to bring health and fitness together as one, because I think we speak of the health and fitness industry and they're often very separate things when we look at health and fitness, and a lot of fitness professionals or sporting athletes have to do unhealthy things at certain times, and having that nursing and midwifery background almost gave me a lens to be able to come into business and coaching and working with women and be able to look at things with more of a holistic coaching philosophy. And yeah, that's really what has made me pursue coaching as a full-time business now, and build up a company with other coaches, and really dive into that passion and almost leave nursing and midwifery behind me. But there's no such thing as wasted experience, and I always speak about that. Just, there's just time. So I've really brought over everything I've learned from my nursing and midwifery and gone into the health and fitness industry and just launched into it and started a business. And yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Isn't it funny? You mentioned a lens, right? And no wasted experience. That's something that can often get lost when you're trying to strive or achieve something. And I think I would assume that, obviously with your past and your past experience, that you would have built the skill, or I guess, of empathy. And I look at the fitness industry. I've been in the fitness industry for a long time now, and almost seen it do a full circle, where I think we're really starting, if I look back 8, 9, 10 years ago, it was hardcore, like it's like, there was no such thing as, or that empathy didn't exist, right? It was kind of like, you're either really hardcore evidence-based, which means you're pushing the limits on competing and kind of getting lean and these kind of things. And I think we're starting to see the shift now where a lot of people, people are realizing that that's not the only way, not only to build your own business, but, if you're on the other side of it, it's not the only way to be healthy, or that perception of what health actually is starting to shift. Which is probably because of social media, right? It's probably because the only people that I would assume that back in the day, the people that you go to, either the person who's the strongest in the gym, or the biggest, the leanest, or whatever it is, right? Whereas I think now social media is allowing it to be a little bit more decentralized, if that's the word, where we're getting actual health experts being able to have their say, that have a different set of skills and a different lens, as you said. So I think it's quite interesting I think we're in full circle.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even since I started taking my own training seriously, like back in 2016, it was such a different place. Like I used to go to bodybuilding.com and T-Nation to get my information, right?
T-Nation, wow.
T-Nation.com. There was no women's section back then, right?
Yeah.
There was just one way of doing things. There was the hardcore meal plans. And like you said, it was looks one. And now we're in this space where like looks aren't enough. And people want education and they want knowledge. And like there's all this conversation that like women aren't small men, and I just love that because like you said, there was just such a divide and there was just one way of doing things, and there's so many ways to get a result. And like you said, social media has just highlighted that. It's really just showed other people different lenses and different ways of doing things. And yeah, that's what I love about the health and fitness industry. It's also what's fueled like what I'm doing now is learning mistakes and making mistakes for 5 years to get to where I am now. Whereas when I work with women now, I'm like, God, you are so lucky. Like, you are so lucky that you don't have to go through this avenue that I did and like search through bodybuilding.com to find like a training program that was like a chest day split. So it's just such a different space now.
Yeah. So one thing that you said before, which sparked an idea in my head, was not just the result, but I feel like often, and this happens not just in fitness, but it happens, we were actually talking about this with finance, you know, what the result is, you know, what like the stereotype of what you need to be in a sense, right? Like, I think what's starting to shift now is that the only result or the result that you're shooting for is starting to move away from that needing to always be lean, needing to always be, you know, aesthetically pleasing for those around you, and starting to shift now to, well, the result's whatever you want it to be, and we now have all the tools and the kind of research to actually be able to say, well, you know, if you want this, we can help you get there.
Yeah, for sure. And like what you said, it used to be just the before and after that sold a result. And I think now, like, there's so much more to fitness that can be applied throughout your entire life, like business, mindset. There's so many areas that you can grow and develop in, and the gym is a tool. And that's what coaches do. They give you a toolbox, and you're able to use that toolbox and apply it to different areas. So yeah, I really love the way the fitness industry is changing, and as well, like even body positivity and just the different ways that women are being able to accept themselves and understand their body, and that we are very different. There's always more approaches than one.
Yeah, 100%. And look, social media does some horrible things to people, but there are some positives there as well. Yeah. We might dive into your journey now. It's quite an interesting one. You know, you obviously didn't start in the I guess the fitness industry, but you've always been in health. Do you want to give everyone a bit of an insight into your journey and kind of how we've gotten to where we are right now?
Yeah, so like I mentioned at the start, I was working as a nurse and a midwife for 7 or 8 years full time, and I always felt like I had two passions. I felt like I had like the nurse Sharelle that was like healthcare based, that was a health professional, and then I had my own, I guess, personal passion for fitness on the side. I've always sort of been athletic from university. Like I was running and I was doing gym classes, I was doing all the things. And then, like I said, I had the nurse side of me. But I always saw them as so separate. Like I didn't actually think that I could take that passion and have a career or a business from it. So I worked as a nurse and a midwife for like many years. And like I said, I learned so much about not only like, you know, the human body and physiology and communication, but also that lens that we spoke about at the start. And in the background, you know, my passion for fitness was just growing, and I naturally sort of lent into the competing side of things and got into bodybuilding with the WBFF, and that's the federation that I'm a professional in now. So I had these two things growing at the same time. You know, I was trying to be a professional, I was managing shift work like an absolute boss, I was working night duty and competing, I was doing night duty in peak week, and I had these two conflicting lives. And it didn't even occur to me that, you know, maybe is fitness something you want to do? The thing that triggered me is I started spending more time on the ward thinking about fitness and training and gym than my patients. And that's when I was like, something needs to change.
Yeah.
I think I need to try this. You know, I'm only early 20s. I really need to lean into this. So I started my PT cert on the side and just started, you know, studying and learning more about fitness and asking why and really diving into that. And it wasn't until like I finished my cert and I was doing just some casual PT stuff that I was like, this is what I want to do. This is really where I want to like pursue. It's my heart isn't in nursing and midwifery anymore. So like I said, I was working as a PT, and then it was really like the COVID period, like when lockdowns and things were starting to happen, that I just started not enjoying my nursing as much and really starting to enjoy the fitness side more so. When I really lent into that and started putting myself out there more on social media and really leaning into that space more so. And that's what sort of naturally led me to the online coaching space. And I think I lent away from it for a long period of time. And I'm not sure why. I'm like, nah, I've studied. I've gone to uni. I've spent all this time doing this thing. And I had this thing that I felt like I should do. But then I had this passion that I was spending all my time thinking about. So I lent into the fitness space and I went all in. And there was a 6-month period where I was trying to do both. I was like working at the hospital and then burning myself out, PTing in person, starting online business, doing all those sorts of things. And I just got to a point where I was like, no plan B. Like, you're either going in and trying it, and worst case scenario, you go back to working on the ward, which, you know, is something that's okay. You don't hate it. Like, you can go back to it. So yeah, there was a 6-month period where I like transitioned from working as a nurse. I started with a very small handful of online clients and transitioned away from in-person stuff. And yeah, I've just built my client base up from there and really grown my own coaching method and philosophy in the way that I work with women. And now where I am, like I have, 3 other coaches who work alongside with me, and my partner who also left his full-time teaching position to work or come into business with me. He could see me drowning. And now I feel like I'm at this space like where I'm truly doing something that I absolutely love.
How important is that? You know, so I guess one of the things, right, is that we can, as a society, we can fall into stereotypes, and I think that's the problem we're talking about, and we're probably going to touch on that a little bit later on. But the hardest thing is to break that stereotype and to put yourself out there. And for you, I would imagine it would have been a really, really tough decision that wasn't taken lightly to shift from, nursing and midwifery to coming across and going all in on your own business in fitness. Like you said, there's so many different stereotypes. There's I've studied, I've gone to uni. What is this going to be a waste? Yep. What's the next step? What are people going to think of me? Like, there's so much there that you have to break through the noise. And first, how was that making that decision for you, and what advice could you potentially give others who are thinking about doing the same thing?
Yeah, it was a massive challenge for me in terms of identity, because I'd always, even on social media, I'd shown up and I knew that people were inspired by a shift worker who seemed to be doing it all. And whilst I still classify myself like I'm still a nurse, it's just not what I'm doing or pursuing financially at the moment. But for me, I think like the biggest point for me was realizing if you don't do this now, you'll forever not know. And the worst case scenario is that you go back to doing what you're already doing. So for me, it was like the unknown of not pursuing something that, like, I knew, like, time's important. Like, when you do things, there's always an important critical time. And I knew that if I didn't take this step now, it wouldn't happen. I knew that if I stayed in comfort and continued to do what was easy instead of what was unknown or uncertain, it just might never have eventuated. And I look back now in hindsight and I even think, God, I can't even believe I wasted 6 months not going all in. Like, there was a 6-month transition where I was like, do I do it? And then I went all in, and now I'm like, wow, it's amazing how much you can grow and how far ahead you can get with the right people, the right guidance, and the right mindset. And that took a lot of work for me, to be honest. Like I said, I went through a lot of identity shift and being like, I know I have a lot of respect in this space for being a shift worker that's inspiring other nurses to live a healthy, fit lifestyle. But I'm not a nurse entirely. Like, I'm Sharelle Grant, and there's multiple areas of me, and that's just a part of me. So I went through, as you can probably tell, a lot of like internal dialogue of being able to make that transition and let go of what society deems I should do. And even for family, like, there's a lot of stigma around what an online coach is. Love all my family and friends. A lot of them don't really understand what I do.
No.
And that's totally
Not
fine.
at all.
I think my dad thinks I work for Instagram. Like, they're not quite entirely
Yeah.
sure. But I learnt to let go of stigmas because people don't understand. And it wouldn't be fair of me to expect them to understand the world that we're in, the world that we're working in. But I have incredible family that is so supportive, and they can see how happy I am, and they can see how well I'm doing, and the impact that I'm having on all the women that I work with as well. So yeah, there's a lot of areas and a lot of I think internal work. Like, if you are wanting to transition from, traditional schooling or the ways of doing things to starting your own business that no one understands, or pursuing social media, there's kids on TikTok earning $1 million. And, to some people that's wild, but you've just got to really lean into what you're passionate about. And I honestly feel like I don't work a day. There's long days, but I love everything that I do. And I think I'm so lucky to have that passion fueling me.
Yeah, I think the passion side of it is big. And I think it's one of those things that, again, those stereotypes can drain out of you. You've got to grind. It's got to be tough. It's got to be all these things. And in reality, I had a similar thing myself. I had a successful personal training business with upwards of 7-8 coaches as well, but I loved business, man. I couldn't help myself. My favorite part of the day was when another PT or someone else would come up and ask me for advice.
Yep.
And it was the same thing. It's I can't fight that. And same thing, there's stigma. Business coaching is there's a stigma around it, and to be honest, rightfully so. That's why we've actually tried to shift into education, trying to make things more accessible to everybody. No inflated prices, no crazy stuff. But that internal dialogue and all those kind of battles that you fight with yourself, I think the biggest lesson for me was just the second I got rid of all those external pressures and actually just started to realize I'm doing this for the experience. I could do this for the rest of my life. I love it. And then it's same thing now. I honestly don't feel like I work a day. It's crazy. We're sitting here podcasting in a space that has no utility.
Yeah.
Right? Apart from the podcasting, apart from the enjoyment side of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that it's you think it's hard trying to explain to your parents, well, I'm in the exact same position. They're so, podcasting, you got a business school, what's going on here? But it's same thing. It's I think that's something that's one, I've been asked this question a lot lately, and it's do whatever excites you. Because at the end of the day, when times, because you would know starting a business, it's tough. There are times where it will challenge you on such a ridiculous level. The only thing that keeps you going in those times is that love for what you actually do.
Yeah.
And if that's not there, I don't know. I just don't know if I could get through those times. Or, maybe I don't have the insight or the creativity during those times to get to that level that's going to bring that progress. So it's definitely, I think if we can get rid of that stigma and we can get rid of that stereotype around it needs to be painful. It needs to be hard work. I think there's going to be more people chasing their dreams, which leads to innovation. That leads to societal progress, economic progress. We're not in the 19th century anymore. We've moved past those times, and we're in new times. And I think the more that we can accept those, the better off we are.
Yeah. And I think what you said there as well, I remember in my first year, 6 months ago or something, getting through and thinking, when's the grind start? When's the hustle start? When's the, everything I was consume all the content on business. Everyone's grind, hard work, sacrifice. And I was I did a 14-hour day today and I just feel fantastic. And, you know, like what you said, I'm still waiting. Like you said, there's long days, there's hard things. Everyone has to do things that they don't enjoy. That comes with any job. But if you're actually doing something you enjoy and that you're passionate about, that passion fuels it. And, you know, when I facilitate group calls or when I'm educating or, you know, doing the things that I love in my business, it does ignite the flame to go further, and learning to delegate the things that I don't like and give that to someone who does like it. You know, my partner's really good with numbers and he loves planning and spreadsheets and Google Calendar and all that sort of stuff, and I hate it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sporadic, like I do the creative side, and just being able to delegate and find what you're good at and lean into it has really allowed business to be sustainable, right?
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like I know when I have to make changes in my business based on my excitement. Like that's my gauge. It's like, am I excited to do this? Well, if I'm not, we're not doing it.
Yep.
Right? Because it's like, if I'm not excited to do it, I know if I'm not excited now, like imagine what it's going to be like in a couple of months. And like we make shifts all the time just based on that gauge. Obviously we have to make sure it makes sense. But I think, coming back to it, it's definitely like, if you can do what excites you and then build a team around you as well, like I think that's another big one that was a game changer for myself, was like, you know, I'm not skilled at everything. You know, I've got a certain skill. For me, it's strategy. Like, you know, can play chess with the world all day, right? But, you know, creativity, understanding what looks good, you know, like this furniture, like if this was up to me, it would probably look 100 times worse. Fashion, not my thing. Like, you know, skills around creativity, no. But the reality is that's the beauty of building a team, because it really is that team that leads to that progress as well. So, you know, I definitely think that's a great point. This is actually going to be quite controversial. I don't know if you've heard of Tim Grovey?
Yeah.
So, and it kind of popped into my head around when we were talking about stereotypes. Simone Biles, are you up to date with her? She's the Olympic gymnast.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
Okay. So, Simone Biles pulled out of the Olympics because she was having some mental health issues. A day later, Tim Grover puts up a post saying that the reason she, you know, is because she doesn't have the mentality, basically. Saying that she's, you know, it's winning that she doesn't have the mentality for. Because he, you know, he's done the coaching with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and so on. And look, you know, power to him, right? But the post in itself was like, you know, winning doesn't lie, you know, like, so basically saying that she's not a winner, or doesn't have that mentality. And look, you know, everybody's entitled to an opinion. But then there was like the comments, right? And there's people on there that are commenting who, I don't want to make judgment, but like we're talking about an Olympic gold medalist here. So she has been at the absolute peak. Yeah. And anyway, he put that post up and I just thought it was like I go, man, this is what's wrong with the world. You know what I mean? I was just like, this guy knows nothing about her, knows nothing about what she's going through, knows nothing about the situation, but now he's trying to profit or benefit from someone else's misfortune. I just thought it was horrible. But then it come out later on that she's been diagnosed with ADHD, and the reason that she was struggling was because of I think there was it's illegal to have Ritalin, I think it is, in Tokyo. Yeah. So she was struggling. Okay. So, you know, you got a gymnast who risks her life every time she, you know, performs, and you know, kind of takes part in the sport, who now is medically diagnosed with ADHD and can't take her meds, right? And obviously is struggling mentally. And then, you know, this guy who, you know, he might have had some success, thinks that he can come in and just kind of benefit off with misinformation. You know, that's really what it is at the core. That's the start of it, but I wanted to get your take on it and I guess how stereotypes are playing into that as well. Yeah,
I guess, you know, there's sort of two ways of looking at it, and I think mental health, like, it's everyone has a mental health, right? And it's just becoming this, I love the way the direction's going, because people are coming out and showing acts of courage and bravery by putting themselves out there and be like, actually, I'm not okay. And then to think that someone's going to come in and sort of like shame someone else, like, I'm a massive fan of Brené Brown's work. And the more I read into, you know, her philosophies around shame and guilt and why we do what we do, it allows me to understand why there are like people with egos who have to pull other people down in areas where they don't feel as worthy. And I think this shows up everywhere. And in this specific example, that's on a huge scale because it's in the public eye, and this happens every day for everyone. And I think even when it comes to social media, like, everyone's got a social media these days, and there's keyboard warriors everywhere, and everyone's going to have an opinion. And I think we can't get too trapped in other people's opinions. And I'm sure she has a lot of, I guess, mentors and coaches and people that are helping her with her mindset. And it's just this one person. And that's what we see, to be honest. Like, if you put something out there, you've got hundreds of positive comments. You've got hundreds of people praising you. We fixate on like the one person who comes in and says, no, you can't. You know, and that's what people fixate to, and that's humans. That's what we naturally do. We're always going to, you know, seek the comfort, you know. But yeah, I just think it's really important that we have these discussions and raise this awareness to normalize that, like, everyone has a mental health and it's okay to come out. And pulling out and saying no is not failing, or it's not losing. And I almost get a little bit angry, like, in that story, because I just think it's such a shame that those things still exist, and that's the example that we're seeing in the public eye from people in authority.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me was, you know, as I said, he's entitled to his opinion, but there's a due diligence, far out, that he should have. He's written a book about winning, right? And yes, he's dealt with some top athletes in the world, but the reality is, the thing that was really alarming for me was the comments, you know, from people out there, like, yeah, she just doesn't have the mentality, man. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you read his book. You probably sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day, which there's nothing wrong with, right? But she, you know, like, she's an amazing athlete who is putting her body and her life on the line. Like, gymnastics is like, what they do is amazing, right? But that's now spreading and increasing the stigma around it. You know, like, you know, that this mentality of needing to win at all costs is the answer to absolutely everything in life. Like, we're not treating every situation on its merit. And what that does for society, it's like, you know, for me, it was just like an idiotic move. You know, we're taking steps forward as a society around mental health. And then you've got, you know, posts like that. I'm not gonna damn him as a person, you know, but there's a post. Let's treat that on its merit as well. There's a post like that takes us steps back. And yeah, I know. I just thought that it falls into holding on to stereotypes, which is the biggest problem in the world. You know, we're talking about equality. You know, there's many forms, but I think that it's, you know, that as an actual inequality as a concept isn't just about men and women. It's not just about, you know, different races. It in itself is a concept that we need to be able to understand more. And it's situations like that I think, you know, they send us backwards 2 steps, and it's just disappointing. I thought, you know, I was so I've been kind of keeping an eye on his stuff, and I haven't read his books and stuff. It's not really I'm not into the whole kind of guns blazing type thing, but I thought it was quite disappointing.
Yeah. And, you know, the comments and from those people, they're his supporters as well. And you're always going to have that. Like, you're going to have your yes men in the corner. And it's a shame, like you said, it's a shame because it does take us steps backwards. And I think even by just, like what you said, bringing awareness to these sorts of conversations and actually saying, like, that's not okay. And yes, you're entitled to an opinion, but, you know, it's always something to be mindful of, is your influence on other people and how you paint the picture of losing. Because to some people, that's winning. She won. Like, she got out of that situation. She spoke up for herself, and she didn't push through. Like, society tells you that you just got to grind and shut up and suck it up. And that's what, to be honest, like, talking about like, sexuality and lots of other different areas, like just staying quiet is not what we need to be doing today. It's not. Everyone has a voice, everyone has a platform, you're entitled to your opinion, but we need to be fighting for rights. And in my opinion, like mental health is up there with physical health. They're on par. There's no one above the other. And I think like Western medicine and even in healthcare, they treat the physical health. Oh, we'll take your blood pressure. We'll take your pulse. We'll look at this. But like, when do you ask how a person's going? Like, when do you ask the athlete how they're managing? And I thought it was really cool that in the Olympics now, they're showing more of the mindset stuff. I don't know if you've noticed, but the mindset coaches like coming in, and I'm like, this is cool. Like, we're normalizing having someone develop your brain, not just your body. Everyone has a physical coach. And it's definitely something that changes my coaching philosophy and how I coach. I have a team approach. And when you look at any top level athlete, what do they have? They have a team of coaches. There's not one person in the driver's seat that knows everything. It's impossible. How can you have an expert? Like, even when you look at the NBA, like how many coaches are facilitating a team? And I think, normalizing that it's not just about building the body, because that's not what separates the good from the great. It's the mindset. And having people come in and say, yeah, look, I've got a mindset coach, or I'm seeing a therapist. And I'm not screwed up. Like, I'm seeing a therapist to develop my brain. I think it's a really, really great transition in like the fitness space. And I think the Olympics is actually highlighting that this year, and it's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also like, build it. That you kind of use the example building the body, right? But it's like, I know people that have built bodies that they're still not happy. They're still not fulfilled. And I think that is a prime example as why we need to focus on mental health, because people chase things at the expense of things like happiness, of things like joy, of things such as experiences. And that's okay. But if you're okay with it, like if that's what you actually want, and helping people actually understand what they want. Some people will chase a dream body their whole life to gain some type of fulfillment, only to never get it, because what they really were chasing was maybe something like self-acceptance or something of that nature. And I think, again, we're going backwards if we're saying that the result, or that physical result, like winning a basketball game, or, a dream body and these kind of things are the be-all and end-all of our experience in life. In reality, the reason you want to be the best at something is because of the experiences associated with it and the feeling you get from that. So the more that you can focus on that feeling that you get from something, and I often say that in business, this is my gauge for me, am I excited? Am I loving what I'm doing every day? And if not, what can I do to change that? How can I shift my focus internally to understand this a little bit better, and maybe change my behaviors to get me feeling better? I can get lost. I put my hand up business-wise. I could sometimes work till 10 o'clock at night just chasing the dragon. And for me, it's like, okay, well, if that's actually fulfilling me, then I'll be okay with it. But if it's not, I'm not going to sacrifice that fulfillment and that joy for what I do for this end game, because I know once I get there, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're all humans as well. And I think a lot of people, like you probably heard, like a lot of people saying, everyone wants a result. Like, that's what your job is, to get a result. And I'm like, no, it's not. Everyone wants a feeling. They think the result's going to get them the feeling. What if it doesn't? And I see this a lot with women in particular when we're looking at body confidence. They go, I just want to feel happy in my skin. And I'm like, do you think that like losing 5 kilos is going to do that? It's usually not the result that's going to give you that feeling. How can we make you feel successful? Because again, it doesn't matter what you do, but it matters how you feel about what you do. And that's where you see like people that are just absolutely loving themselves, rocking themselves, like owning who they are. And maybe they don't have like the ideal physique that's like shown on social media. And even like coming from my competing background, I see this too frequently, is like people get into aesthetic based goals or physique competitions, or shreds or 6-week challenges, all the things that are sold to women in the fitness industry, thinking it's going to fix their problems. And I think it's the mindset component of it. It's like, how do you show up and own who you are no matter what stage you're at, whether it's postpartum after having a baby, or maybe it's in your teenage years, or it's an athlete. Like, you're going to have different chapters of your life, and it's not about like all or nothing, because if you do all or nothing, you get all or nothing. It's just about shifting gears and learning to like accept who you are. And it does come down to a lot of that internal work that you sort of just spoke about.
Yeah, 100%. It's consciousness at its core, right? It's how can I be more aware of the situation I'm in, no matter what.
Yep.
Not tie too much emotion to it. Let emotions take their course, but understand them and accept them, and then assess the situation and learn how to get out of that situation. What I want to get out of it. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit. I want to come back to equality. All right, and one of the reasons. And I'll put my hand up with this, right? Like, we haven't had too many females on the podcast, but it was an awareness thing for me. It was once I actually had a look at it and I go, well, why is that? Why? And I think it's just me, personally, I from my past experience, I gravitate to men. But the awareness around equality at the moment, where can we get better as a society? And a question that I ask is, as a male, what can someone like me do to help create those equal rights, to create equal opportunity and really push the envelope?
What made you come to that realization where you were like, we haven't had any women on the podcast? Was there something that happened, or an event, or?
It was actually feedback. So we do have females that listen to the podcast, and they were like, "Oh, we'd love for you to have a woman on," and I'm like, "Holy shit!"
Oh no, yep.
Like, I'm just going with the flow,
Yeah,
and I was like, "Wow!" Like, we actually haven't done it, and that was again big thing for me is like, I honestly believe that we're so ingrained in how the world used to be that we just think that, like, no, that shit doesn't exist, you can kind of get yourself into that headspace. And for me, it was just a massive eye opener that, again, I said it at the start, but if you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. And that's my honest opinion about this. That's why we're trying to make these changes. And even in the way I think about, the awareness we can create, and we're doing Women's Month for that exact reason, is how do we inspire, women around the world that should be pushing the envelope, and more so, how can we create awareness for men? So we have a platform, we have a lot of male listeners. How can we start to create awareness around, some of the issues that we're facing? That was just something that for me is like it's a non-negotiable now.
Yeah, I think as well, it's easy to think, oh, well, it's 2021, like, it doesn't exist anymore. Like, there is no discrepancy between men and women. We're on and it's not the case, right?
No.
Like, there's still so many situations where there are very, like, stereotypical examples, and I think it's shifting a lot. Like, I even think of, like, my own space in the fitness industry at the moment and how much that's shifted. Like, when I first started going to the gym, I was the only female in the weights room. And I think, like, gone are the days where people are thinking that weights make you bulky and that it's a very masculine thing to do and energy. And even in competing, like, when I first started in bodybuilding, for example, like, I had no friends doing it. There was no one in that space, and women were second in the competing realm. Like, the shows with the men, and it's very different now. It's a very different space. And I just think spaces like this, like bringing women onto the podcast and like putting women in positions of leadership and showing that to other females as well, creating safe spaces, community, like so incredibly important, especially for women. It's so hard to find strong communities. This is how we create that awareness. And I'm excited for like the next 10 to 20 years to see how that changes in business, how that changes in fitness, even in healthcare. It's changed so much in those areas. But I just think like these two sort of industries are just catching up now. And it's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely changing. I mean, I don't know. This is a bit of a rabbit hole, but for me, it's a lot of... Like, I look at politics, right? And I'm not big into it, like not by any means, right? But I kind of
rabbit hole. Be careful here.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to try not to, but I'm probably going to go there, to be fair. But it's I look at the world and I think I look at decentralization and it's just kind of happening everywhere. Like everything is starting to move away from centralization in a sense. Business is, economics is, finance is, but I think what we're going through at the moment is, like what I said before, that full circle, right? Where we're really starting to unwind. And I'm excited for that because I think that will play a big role in things like equality, not just in between men and women, but, a big one for me is like countries, third world countries who are basically pinned down, they literally have no opportunity whatsoever. Like there's not even an opportunity there, they just can't, and it's because, I think the financial system plays a massive role in that. But I think that's the thing that excites me the most is because I'm actually really excited to see how it plays out in the, male and female realm of equality. Because I think it'll make a massive difference. I think you look at things like social media where it gives anyone has the opportunity to have a platform. But I think as we start to see, I'm going to say it, power move away from governments, that'll make a big difference in this. And I think that's what people should pay attention to. Like I study economics because I like to understand how the world works, and that's what I see. And I think just this kind of, I think it's going to be great for the world. But I think there's greater powers to be that if we can kind of start to look in the right areas, and as we're talking about putting women in place, positions of leadership and these kind of things, I think we're going to see more of that. One, through awareness, but two, through economic systems as well.
Yeah, so I completely agree. And like a lens that I'm so grateful for having from my experience as a midwife, accouchering and looking after women in different cultures, delivering babies and seeing how that, because childcare is just a completely different area. And that was just, that I grew up real quick when I became a midwife and just realized some things aren't fair. And, there are a lot of people in the world that just don't have the fortune that we have here in Australia. And there are a lot of people going through situations where they don't speak up, and there's bigger problems in the world, right, than what's even happening on social media. We see the highlights. We see what people want us to see. We don't see the real world. We don't see what's actually happening. And, I'm very grateful for having that lens and being like, far out, like, never take anything for granted. Like, I have so many opportunities at my fingertip if I want to take them, because I'm blessed to be born in this country. Like, as cliche as that sounds, we have so much opportunity here. And it's not until you see it, it's not until you actually experience it and go far out. Like, I never want to go through something like that, or I couldn't imagine having to deal with that or just put up with that. So yeah, we're very lucky here.
Yeah, and my wish is just it starts to even out. I think, and it's about opportunity, right? Like, I think the biggest lesson for me this year is, and this is why I'm kind of putting a massive focus on it, is not everybody starts from the same position.
Yeah. 100%.
And the closer we can get to that, I think, what causes mutiny in the world is inequality. The greater the inequality, the more the mutiny, because people become vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, we deepen relationships with more people that are like us. And eventually that becomes us versus them.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's survival. That's the game we're playing here. So I think the more that we can get the world, all the different kind of concepts of, male, female, country versus country, race versus race, the more that we can get all of that on an equal playing field, we'll prosper. That's the key to prosperity. That's how we move forward as a society. So I just really hope that that's where it goes, and we just want to play our part as well.
Yeah, podcasts are doing it.
100%. That's the power of it.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to dive into a new segment. We don't have a name for it. I'm just going to call it Quickfire. So we're going to roll with that.
Let's do it.
It's pretty corny, but we're going to roll with it. We're going to put a question up on the TV, You have a minute to answer.
Oof.
Yeah. Well, not that we're counting. We're not really timing
A minute.
it.
Okay.
But we want it to be really quick. Like,
Okay.
and not really quick, but, I'm totally blowing this at the moment, but just a kind of simple answer, right? And you can take it away.
Let's do it. I'm in the hot seat. One piece of advice you would give to young females. Ooh, question everything and never feel like you've got to do one way just because someone else does it. I think that was a big lesson for me, was always asking why. I was always asking why, from coaches, from mentors, from myself. And I think leaning into areas and not just settling, whether it's what you should do with your life, what you should do with your training, what you should do with your health or your diet, but always seeking out like your way of doing things. And now I feel like I'm at this space with my own health and fitness training business where I'm just in flow and I'm like living my best life because I've had so many hard lessons and asked why the whole time.
Amazing.
The biggest lesson you've learnt in business, ask for help. Ask for help when you need it. Oh God, I'm a fierce independent. I'm an independent woman, but I was very humbled when I started a business that I can't do it all, and trying to do it all means that I can't do my best. So asking for help, seeking out coaches like my partner, a huge component in that, and just, giving myself rest as well, has allowed me to deliver a better service and therefore have a better business. And I think that's just integral, not even in business, in life, like having mentors and having coaches and guidance along the way, has been a lesson I've learnt the hard way, but a really valuable lesson.
It's the hardest thing to do because, the technician in you says, do.
Yeah. You
That's
can do it.
100% the biggest thing for me as well is
Yeah.
like just taking a leap from being the technician to then being more of a leader.
Yes.
Is what honestly dictates your success in
Yeah.
business. That's the hardest leap for many to take, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
I've seen it with myself. I see it with other people, but yeah, I just think it's definitely difficult to make that leap because we're all technicians at heart,
Yeah.
especially in what we do.
Yeah.
Like that's the way you start. It's ingrained into you, but it can quickly change.
Yeah. Yeah. What motivates you to get out of bed every morning? Honestly, my business. Like I don't sleep in. I don't know how people sleep in. Like I get up and I love my life and I'm excited to start my day and, get up and be able to train and just look after myself and build an empire. So there's no part of me that can sleep in. As much as my partner's like, can't you just lay in the morning? I'm like, I can't. Like, let's get up and do things. So I think my business actually motivates me a lot to, drive towards success and actually live that passion and build something. Like, this wasn't a part of the 5-year plan, but I'm excited to be working towards something new every day.
Yeah, it's what I was saying before. Excitement's the key. Like, if you're excited about something, you're not sleeping in.
Nah,
you're
no
not,
chance.
You're not sleeping in. Like, like I'm an early waker, 4:30.
Yeah.
And it's like, people are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, honestly,
I got shit to do.
yeah. I'm excited about what I've got to work on
Yep.
today, right? And I think that's kind of what I was saying before. I think it's so important as a business owner for your business to excite you. And if it doesn't, you need a shift.
Yeah.
I think it's so pivotal.
Yeah.
Because it's not about grinding. Like, that's a load of shit. At times you have to work hard, but it's like, it's not the grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, does this excite me? Because if it does, I will wake up.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas. Who
sleeps in?
Yeah. Like, who sleeps in on
Santa's
Christmas? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're waking up at 4 o'clock on Christmas just to open your presents,
Yeah.
and kind of see the little reindeer paw prints around that.
Yep, exactly right.
Awesome. Is that awesome?
Oh, that's all the questions. Sweet. I nailed that.
Nailed it. Awesome. Well, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on the podcast. We'll definitely have to get a round 2 going at some point.
Yep.
But for everybody who's listening, where can they find you? Obviously you've got Instagram and so on. So there's a little section where you can plug yourself.
Ooh. So my main platform, I guess, is my Instagram, and it's just Sharelle Grant. There's only one of me. I also have a podcast with my co-host Danny, so the Level Up podcast with Sharelle and Danny. That's probably my other main platform, and then any other information about myself or my services, just sharellegrant.com.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And for everyone who tuned in, really appreciative for you guys as well, showing us support. We don't get to do this without you guys. So a big thank you, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me.